This next one we're going to do is going to do some heavy duty masking once again, as well as painting with color and light. This is one where there was an absolute camera fail of auto white balance. And this was shot with a Sony camera. You can tell that from the ARW. And I switched over to Fuji since then. One thing Fuji has always been among the best at is auto white balance, even going back to the early 2000s. And in this particular one, the camera failed. So let's go right up to basic. And where it says white balance, we're going to change it from as shot, which would have been the auto, to daylight. And you can see, okay, the color is looking a lot better. Now let's take a look at the histogram. This was underexposed a bit. When was this shot? This is a couple years back. This is 2015. I was concerned about the clouds down in here. And I don't know if back in 2015, the histograms on the camera was quite as accurate as they are now. So I played a little safe because I wanted to protect these highlights back here. And I overdid it a bit. So you can see we've got a lot of blank area here on the right, but we have some things that are almost white. So let's go ahead and bring up the exposure so we can bring that all back. And now to me, these whites are getting a little too bright for me. So I'm going to bring back the highlights. So what does the image need? There's also a danger here where I talked about leading lines before. And that's the slope down from this tree. Notice this slope as it comes down. It's almost hitting exactly into the corner. And you can kind of say it is. In fact, if I bring up the crop, I'm going to do it right exactly to that corner. When you have a leading line in a photograph that goes exactly into the corner, it no longer becomes a leading line. It becomes something to draw you out of the image. Just by doing that little crop, now this image is inviting you to leave through the lower left-hand corner, where if I have it down to here, that helps. It would be nice to have a little bit more, and we'll fix that when we get closer to the end. So what are the problems with the image? Well, obviously the tree, in particular this one tree, is the main subject. Since it's touching this other tree, you can kind of consider them one subject. We've got some sticks and things sticking out. We'll deal with them at the end. The shadows are too dark and the colors are off. So let's bring the shadows way up and let's add some clarity. Let's add some dehaze too. And then let's see if we add some vibrance and saturation, what that does to the image. Now, if we bring up the saturation to what the rest of the image needs, unfortunately, what happens down here is it gets wrong. That dirt sand has gone way too yellow. Now, yes, this is near sunrise, but I've been here a bunch of times. This is in Bryce Canyon, and this is far more yellow than it needs to be. Also, do you see these little spots? Can you see them on your screen? I'm not sure. There's spots all over this thing. So let's hit the spot removal tool, which is the Band-Aid, and let's hit A, which will show us the spots. A is the visualize spots shortcut, and it also says it down on the bottom of the screen. You can see visualize spots here. So let's hit that. And yeah, oh my, look, you can see those perfect circles with the holes in the middle. Those are spots. Somehow I ended up with a filthy sensor. So I got a bunch of them here, and you can see some of them are more faded than others, but there's a bunch. So we're going to have to take a minute to get rid of all these things. You can see them all over the place, clear as day. Apparently I did some lens changing out in the wind, and look in this upper corner here. They're all over the place. So not good. I am much more careful about this than apparently I was back in 2016. And if you want to cheat, you can also just get all three of it at once. Oh, but I went to three at once. It picked a spot that had another spot. So you can then click where it samples from and drag it somewhere else. And let's see, looks like there's two more there right here. I'll draw across those. Oh, there's another one here. And there's one here. I think that's it. We can turn visualize spots all the way up with the slider. And oh, there's one more right there. I think that got them all. Let's back off to see if there's any other big offenders. And you know what, while we're here, let's see if the software will get rid of that little twig on that left edge as well. Let's see if that works. All right, so let's hit A, which will hide our visualizer, and we'll hit done. And it failed in one place. You see this right here? It picked up some of the wrong place. So I need to hit Q again. Click on this one. I'm going to hit delete because we're going to have to do that one again. And let's just do 1. And that worked better. Oh, and I see why it happened. My bad. We were on clone. I was supposed to be on heal for that. So when you get rid of spots, in most cases, you're going to want to be on heal. The other ones, it didn't seem to matter where it sampled from. So that looks a heck of a lot better. So we got rid of our spots. I mentioned the foreground is way too yellow. Also, the sky needs a little more power on the left side. You can see how the sky is darker on the right. How can we get just part of the sky edited? Well, watch this. This is cool. So we're going to choose select sky. Let's see how good a job it does. And that's pretty amazing job. But I don't want to affect the sky over here. I want to have it from, say, here going across and then end here. So what we're going to do is click on where it says sky 1, and you see there's our 3 dots. And I'm going to tell it intersect the mask with a linear gradient. So this is the advanced stuff in Lightroom. Here, watch what happens. Did I just lose it? Let's see. Okay, intersect with linear gradient. And then I draw my linear gradient and I take it up as far as I want to go. And now you can see it's got the sky, but just with the gradient. So now I can bring the exposure down on that side, add some dehaze, then bring the exposure back up to make that left side as dramatic as the right. I think the blue's gotten a little too saturated and maybe a little too dark, but now that we've got it uniform across the image, we can hit done. And if I want to make that blue a little less saturated and a little brighter, we can do that in Use Saturation Luminance by clicking on saturation. We'll get our little pointer and drag down just to pull a little of the blue out. And then we'll hit luminance and push it up just a little. So now we have a nice uniform sky to deal with. Now we need to deal with this foreground. So I think we're going to have to use a brush. So let's get our brush. We got auto mask on, although auto mask might have a hard time because those roots from this tree are pretty much the same color. So we're going to have to do a little bit of back and forth with that. You can see we've got this kind of same sandy dirt up there. And really what I'm after is I just want to pull out some of the saturation and the brightness of it. So let's bring down the saturation. And let's add a little blue to it because it shouldn't be quite that yellow. And it's also gone a little bit red, which it's not. Let's bring that back a little bit as well. That's more what it looks like. Now it's looking more like a regular kind of dirt. So we've got everything fixed now, except for our actual subject, which is the tree, right? So how can we help that along? What does the tree need? Well, the trunk of the tree needs a color change to it to separate it out from the rest of what's going on. And what happens in certain places, it happens with Bryce with the orange gold reflecting up. It happens in Monument Valley with all the red dirt reflecting up. It affects the color of the things that it reflects up to. And this trunk should not be this yellow. So let's do that separately. Let's actually, you know what? Let's see if Lightroom can do it for us. Let's create new mask and choose select subject and see what Lightroom comes up with. Can it pick out the tree for us? And wow, that's pretty impressive. There is a problem, however, though. Notice it failed in between the branches here. It gave us our trees, but it also picked up some of the sky. Yep. Yep. However, remember, we can select sky and we can do this intersections now. So I can subtract. So I've got this subject. I can click on subtract and tell Lightroom, well, select the sky and subtract that out from what it just picked out And let's see how good a job it does with that. And look at that. It just got rid of the vast majority of all those little pieces in between the branches. So I'm going to hit exposure. I want to bring that up a little bit. And the tree's a little too yellow. You can look at the green needles and you see they've gone yellow. So let's add green to those and a little bit of blue to counteract the yellow. And we'll add some saturation. And look at those pine needles now. Now they look great. All right, Sky question while I'm here.
Okay, yeah. So when you did the intersection, Howie had a question about dragging the color and choosing. Can you just go over that?
Yeah, all right, I'll do that again. But let me finish this part first, and we'll do another one that does that. So the last thing I think I need to fix on here really is the trunk of the tree. So let's create a new mask and go to brush. So I'm going to go smaller. And I'm going to paint just on the trunk. Now, this part that's down near this sand probably had a lot of sand blowing on around it. So it probably did kind of get coated with it. So I'm not going to worry about it too much. I just want to get the primary trunks, and I want to do the same thing on this tree. And you get to see, you don't have to be that precise with this stuff. Not when you're in Lightroom. Photoshop, you got to be precise. But in Lightroom, everything you're doing is feathering off. So as I mentioned, it's gone too yellow. So let's add some blue, which is the opposite of yellow. And you can see now the trunk is going grayer. Doesn't need a little green, or does it need some magenta? Actually, I think it needs a little magenta as I drag the slider over. And that's looking a heck of a lot better. I like it. All right, one last thing. The physical weight of the tree, the physical size of the tree in the image is not quite big enough. It needs to have more impact, and to give it more impact, it needs to be a bigger part of the frame. So let's go up to the crop tool. Let's bring it down from the top. I'm going to bring it over from the left because we don't need all of that left over there. And I'm going to bring it up from the bottom. And when I come up from the bottom, I need to make sure that this line on this slope does not end up exactly in the corner, but there's nothing saying I can't come above it, something like this. So if I come to there and then add a vignette, let me go ahead and I'll make a virtual copy again, my command apostrophe, so that you can, so I'll put them both up on the screen at the same time. Let's reset that one. So I'm going to hit the C key. So here's some keyboard shortcuts. If I hit the C key in Lightroom, that means compare. Now, if I want them really to take up the screens, I can hit Shift Tab, and that gets rid of these menus on either side. And then I have the lights out key, which is L. So if I hit L once, it makes everything other than the images go kind of a dark gray, although you can still see your menus. If I hit it again, it turns everything completely black. So there is our before and after of the image. And just take notice of how much more power the tree has in the image, because it is now the largest thing in the image. There's nothing size-wise that's competing with it. And by changing the color of the trunk and the color of the sand in the front, we've now created more of a 3D effect that really gives the image a lot more dimension and depth. So again, if I want to turn my lights on, hit L, bring my menus back, Shift Tab, and then hit C to get out of that. So again, if I went full screen, there's our original raw file, and there's our edit. And there was a question more about those sky intersection things. That is something that is probably one of the hardest things to kind of wrap your head around in the newest iteration of the Lightroom masking. So we're going to continue to do that. So rather than repeat the same one, let's move on to another image.